Have you ever felt like you met someone and somehow you already knew them, even though you had never seen their face before? And have you ever wondered whether some of the hardest moments in your life are not random at all, but the echo of a cause you cannot remember, still rippling forward until it is finally understood? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are stepping into a story that sounds like wild fantasy on the surface, but underneath it is actually a mirror for real life. It is about rebirth, hidden karma, and the strange way destiny brings two souls back together, not to punish them, but to teach them. It is also about the illusion of fear, because sometimes what looks like a monster is actually a protector in disguise. Sometimes what looks like a curse is actually a doorway to awakening. And sometimes the person you run from is the very person who came to save you from yourself. Let me set the scene gently, like opening a door into a world where the line between human and spirit is thinner than paper. In this world, the mountains are old and watchful, rivers speak in dreams, and the night sky feels close enough to touch. People live with the awareness that life is not one straight line. Life is a wheel. It turns, it repeats, it returns. And what is not resolved in one life does not disappear. It waits, quietly, patiently, like a seed in the dark soil. Our main character is a young woman who begins her new life with a feeling she cannot explain. She is alive, breathing, walking, speaking, yet a shadow of memory follows her like a faint perfume. She does not remember details. She only remembers the sensation of betrayal, the sensation of being trapped, the sensation of dying with a question in her chest that never got answered. In her new life, she grows up in a place where people speak carefully about spirits. Some fear them, some worship them, some pretend they do not exist. But everyone knows the stories. A snake spirit in the forest that guards a forbidden spring. A demon emperor in the underworld who rules with cold discipline. A marriage vow that can bind to beings across lifetimes. A debt that can be repaid only through love that becomes wisdom. She tries to live normally, but normal does not hold. Fate is already moving. One day, everything changes because of a decision made by others. It is the kind of decision that happens in human families and human societies all the time, even without magic. A negotiation, an arrangement, a trade dressed up as duty, a marriage that is not about love but about survival. In her village, something is wrong. Crops fail, illness spreads, strange dreams haunt the elders. They say the balance has been disturbed. They say a powerful spirit has been offended. And when fear grows, people look for a sacrifice that will calm the unknown. Someone whispers the old solution: offer a bride to the snake spirit, bind the spirit to the village, turn a threat into a guardian through a ritual marriage. You can feel the cruelty in how quickly a community can rationalize sacrificing one person to soothe many people's fear. It is not only fantasy. It happens in different forms everywhere. When groups panic, they often choose someone to carry the blame, someone to carry the cost, someone to carry the burden so others can pretend they are safe. And so, without her consent, our heroine is selected. At first she fights, she refuses, she cries, she pleads. But the elders speak in the voice of inevitability. They talk about duty, they talk about tradition, they talk about the greater good. They do not talk about her heart. They do not talk about her future. They do not talk about the fact that fear is not wisdom. The night of the ritual arrives. Lantern light trembles. Incense smoke curls into the dark. The air is thick with prayer and dread. She is dressed as a bride, but she feels like someone walking toward a cliff. And inside her, something older than this life begins to stir. Not a clear memory, but a warning. A sensation that she has been on this road before. She is taken to the forest, to the place where the trees grow close and the ground feels alive. The villagers stop at the edge, unwilling to go further. They push her forward alone. She stands there, shaking, listening to the sounds of night. Leaves whisper, water moves somewhere nearby. And then she sees it, a snake. Not a small one, not a harmless one. A serpent long enough to make the mind recoil. Eyes like burning amber, scales that catch moonlight like metal. Her body locks up with fear, but then something unexpected happens. The snake does not strike. It watches. It lowers its head, almost like a bow. And in that moment, the air shifts as if the world itself is holding its breath. A voice enters her mind, deep and calm. Do not be afraid. She stumbles back, not understanding how a voice can exist without lips. Her fear tries to shape the moment into a horror story. But the voice does not feel cruel. It feels ancient. It feels tired. It feels strangely familiar. She demands to know what it wants. The voice answers with a sentence that lands like a stone in water. You promised. She freezes. Her mind rejects it. She has never promised anything to a snake. She has never even been in this forest before. She tries to speak, but the words catch. The snake moves closer, slow, controlled. And then the world bends. The forest fades. The night dissolves. Reality turns like a page. For a blink, she sees another life. A palace, silk curtains, cold marble floors, a woman running, barefoot, blood on her sleeve, tears on her cheeks. A man in black robes watching from a high balcony, eyes like a storm held back by discipline. Soldiers closing in. A scream, a blade, the sensation of falling into darkness. And just like that, she is back in the forest, trembling, breath broken, as if she has been pulled through a tunnel of time and thrown back into her body. She looks at the snake again. Now she is not only afraid, she is confused. The snake speaks again, softer. In your last life, you were killed before you could understand why. In this life, you will learn. The story could easily become a simple romance at this point. The terrifying groom who turns out to be gentle. The helpless bride who slowly falls in love. But the deeper truth is more interesting, because the real enemy here is not the snake. It is ignorance. It is the way fear creates false stories. It is the way the mind clings to appearances and misses the hidden causes underneath. The marriage happens, not with a human priest, but with a kind of spiritual binding. A thread of energy wraps around their fates, like a knot tied across time. And the moment it seals, something shifts in him. The snake form shimmers, and before her eyes, he becomes a man, tall, quiet, presence heavy like a mountain. His face is not soft, but it is not cruel. His gaze holds centuries, and when he looks at her, it feels like he is looking at someone he has waited for through many winters. She cannot speak. She wants to run, yet her feet stay planted, as if her soul recognizes him even while her mind panics. He introduces himself, not with arrogance, but with a truth that feels too big for her understanding. I am the one they call the Demon Emperor. That title should terrify her. And it does, for a second. But then she notices something else. In his eyes there is no hunger to harm her. There is a kind of guarded devotion, like someone carrying a vow heavier than a crown. Her first weeks with him are not what she expects. There is no cruelty, no forced intimacy, no humiliation. Instead, there is structure, protection, silence, and something almost absurd. He spoils her, not in the shallow sense of gifts for display, but in the sense of removing obstacles from her path. He ensures she eats well. He ensures she sleeps without nightmares. He places warm blankets around her shoulders before she even asks. He assigns servants to help her, but instructs them to speak gently and never to frighten her. At first, she suspects manipulation. Her mind searches for the trap, because when you have been hurt before, kindness can feel suspicious. But his behavior remains steady. Day after day, he acts like her safety matters more than his pride. Still, the question remains, why? He finally answers one evening when the moon hangs low and the air smells like rain. He tells her a story, not as entertainment, but as confession. In your past life, you stood against a powerful family to protect someone weaker than you. You refused to participate in cruelty. You carried compassion into a place where compassion was seen as weakness. And for that, you were targeted. You were killed. She tries to protest, but fragments flash again in her mind. A young servant girl crying, a noblewoman screaming accusations, a court full of people pretending not to see, and herself speaking up anyway, voice shaking but firm. Her chest tightens. The memory brings grief like a sudden cold wind. He continues, I could have saved you then. I was late, or maybe I was too proud. Either way, you died, and your soul carried an unanswered wound into the next turning of the wheel. I swore to repay that debt. She asks the question every viewer is asking in their head. If you loved me then, why did you not stop it? His jaw tightens, and for the first time she sees pain crack the surface of his control. Because I believed power could control fate. I believed if I punished your enemies, it would erase the loss. But punishment does not revive the dead. It only multiplies hatred. I learned that too late. There is a deep teaching here, one that belongs to real life. Revenge feels like justice, but it rarely heals. It often chains you tighter to the very suffering you want to escape. Karma is not only about what happens to you, it is also about what you choose to do with what happens to you. If you respond to pain with more pain, the wheel turns and turns. If you respond to pain with awareness, the wheel can slow. So the demon emperor, feared by countless spirits, is actually someone who has been learning a lesson the hard way. His power is immense, but his wisdom is still growing. And that is why he spoils her, not to possess her, but to protect her from the kind of ending she had before. But destiny is not satisfied with comfort alone. The past does not fully release until it is faced. Soon, enemies from her former life begin to appear like ghosts. A noble family that once controlled her fate in the palace now has descendants in this life, still hungry for dominance. And there is something darker, a curse placed at the moment of her death. A curse meant to keep her soul trapped in fear even after rebirth. Nightmares return. She wakes sweating, hearing the sound of footsteps in a corridor that does not exist. She starts doubting herself again. She starts thinking maybe she truly is cursed. Maybe she truly cannot escape. The demon emperor does not simply fight these forces with violence. That is what makes him different from the stereotype. He sits with her during her rambling. He tells her to breathe. He teaches her a simple practice. Listen to my voice. Match your breath to it. Let the sound guide you back into your body. His voice becomes her anchor, like a deep humming bell. And again, we see the connection between sound and healing, not as decoration, but as a spiritual technology. Sound draws attention out of spirals. Sound gives the nervous system a rhythm. Rhythm gives the mind a place to rest. As she practices, she begins to see more, not only memories of her death, but the causes that lead to it. She sees how pride and fear shaped the palace politics. She sees how silence from good people allowed cruelty to win. She sees how she herself, in her past life, carried a hidden belief that she had to suffer to prove she was righteous. That last part is important. Sometimes people unconsciously cling to suffering because it makes them feel meaningful. They think, if I endure enough, I will be worthy. If I sacrifice enough, I will be loved. But wisdom says something else. Worthiness is not earned through pain. Worthiness is your nature. And compassion begins with allowing yourself to live. The more she awakens, the more she challenges the demon emperor too. She tells him that protection is not the same as trust. She tells him she does not want to be treated like fragile treasure. She wants to grow strong. She wants to understand her own karma so she can transform it. At first he resists. His fear of losing her again makes him controlling in subtle ways. He tries to keep her inside safe walls. He tries to solve every problem before it touches her. But she pushes back. And this is where the story becomes a true spiritual romance, not a fantasy of possession, but a path of mutual cultivation. She tells him, if you keep guarding me like I am already dead, you are still living in the past life. I am here now. Let me live. That sentence hits him like thunder. He realizes his so-called devotion has been mixed with attachment. And attachment, even when it looks like love, is still a chain. In Buddhist wisdom, attachment is one of the roots of suffering because it demands that reality obey your fear. But reality does not obey, it flows. So he begins to practice too. He begins to loosen his grip. He begins to choose compassion over control, wisdom over obsession. Together they set out to break the curse, not by destroying enemies alone, but by transforming the karmic pattern that keeps repeating. They travel to a ruined temple where the air tastes like old incense and the walls still hold faint prayers. Inside, they find a record of the past vow. It turns out the marriage bond did not begin in this life. It began long ago, when he was not an emperor and she was not a noblewoman. They were two wandering souls who met in hardship and promised to support each other's awakening. But then life twisted them. Power separated them. Fear corrupted their intentions, and the vow turned into a knot. The temple reveals the real task. A vow becomes a blessing when it is rooted in freedom and compassion. A vow becomes a curse when it is rooted in possession and fear. So to heal, they must renew the vow with wisdom. Not I will never lose you, but I will love you without chaining you. Not I will destroy anyone who threatens you, but I will protect what is good in both of us, even when anger rises. Not I will force fate to obey, but I will meet fate with clarity and kindness. This is the moment where the fantasy story becomes painfully real, because how many relationships suffer from invisible vows like these? People say they love, but inside they are bargaining with fear. They hold too tight. They demand certainty. They punish each other for old wounds. They confuse intensity with devotion. The heroine begins to see that her past life-death was not only caused by others. It was also connected to a pattern of self-sacrifice without boundaries. Compassion without wisdom becomes martyrdom, and martyrdom can attract those who want to exploit kindness. So she trains. She learns spiritual practices that strengthen the mind, breath awareness, sound meditation, visualizing light in the heart, not as fantasy, but as a way to steady attention and cultivate courage. She learns to speak truth without hatred. She learns to say no without guilt. The demon emperor, meanwhile, faces something even harder. He must face remorse, not the shallow regret that says, "I wish it was different," but the deep remorse that says, "I see the harm I caused, and I will not repeat it." Remorse is painful, but it is also purifying. It is like fire that burns away the illusion of being right. And when he allows that fire, his energy changes. He becomes less demonic, not because he loses power, but because he gains wisdom. Enemies attack them at the worst time, as enemies often do. A group of spirit hunters, manipulated by the same old bloodline that once killed her, tries to capture her soul energy, believing it can be used to gain immortality. They ambush them near a river. This is where the story could become a spectacle of violence, but we keep it focused on the teachings. The demon emperor could wipe them out instantly, but he hesitates. He knows that killing them will plant seeds of further vengeance, yet he also cannot let them harm her. So he chooses a middle path. He disarms them. He binds them. He speaks to them about cause and effect. He tells them, if you take life for power, power will take your peace. If you chase immortality with cruelty, you will be reborn into fear again and again. The body can last a long time, but the mind will rot. Some laugh at him, some tremble. One young hunter, seeing the calm in his eyes, starts to cry. The young hunter admits he was forced into this. He admits he hated it. He admits he felt trapped. The heroine steps forward and does something that changes everything. She shows compassion. She says, "I know what it is to be used by others. I know what it is to have your life treated like a tool. If you stop now, you can change your path. The past does not have to own you." That moment is her arm transforming. In the past life, she spoke up and was killed. In this life, she speaks up with power beside her, but she does not use that power to crush. She uses it to awaken. Not everyone accepts. Some remain hungry for control, and those who refuse are carried away by their own choices. Like people walking into a storm they insisted was sunshine, but those who accept begin a new life direction. Later, under a quiet sky, the heroine asks the demon emperor if he still fears losing her. He answers honestly, "Yes." She asks, "Then why do you let me walk my own path now?" He says, "Because love that is only fear is not love. It is hunger wearing a mask. I want to love you with a clear mind, even if my heart trembles." That is a line worth sitting with. A trembling heart and a clear mind can exist together. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting with wisdom while fear is present. As time passes, her memories become clearer. She finally remembers the exact moment of her past life death. She remembers the face of the person who ordered it. She remembers the betrayal of someone she trusted. The old anger rises like a dragon. It tells her, destroy them, make them suffer, make them pay. But now she has practice. She hears the anger, and she also hears the deeper truth. If I become hatred, I will be chained to them forever. So she chooses a different response. She confronts the descendant of that bloodline, not with begging, not with revenge, but with truth. She says, your family has carried this cruelty like an inheritance. You think it makes you powerful, but it only proves you are afraid. You are afraid of losing control, so you use violence. You are afraid of being ordinary, so you steal from others. This ends with me. The descendant mocks her at first, But something happens. When she speaks with that kind of clarity, the spiritual curse that was tied to her fear begins to break, because the curse depended on her believing she was powerless. The moment she stops believing, the chain loosens. This is exactly how many psychological curses work in real life. Trauma often binds people through false beliefs. I am helpless. I am unlovable. I am unsafe forever. Healing begins when those beliefs are seen as echoes, not truths. The final release is not dramatic in the way movies show it. It is quiet. One night, she sits in meditation, listening to a deep resonant tone the demon emperor produces like a steady bell within his chest. She follows the sound into stillness. In that stillness, she meets the memory of her death again. But this time she does not flinch. She holds it with compassion. She speaks to her past self internally. You did not deserve that ending. You did not fail. You were brave. Now rest. In the past self, like a child finally comforted, dissolves into light. When she opens her eyes, the air feels clearer. Her body feels lighter. Her mind feels spacious. The curse is gone. The demon emperor is watching her. And for the first time, his eyes look truly free, not because he owns her, but because he no longer needs to imprison himself in guilt. They step outside. Dawn is rising. Birds begin their first songs, and the world looks ordinary and sacred at the same time. Now comes the most beautiful part of the story, the part that is easy to miss. After all that, after curses and vows and destiny, they choose something simple. They choose to live with kindness. They choose to use their power not to dominate, but to protect the vulnerable. They choose to teach others about cause and effect, not as fear, but as empowerment. They choose compassion with boundaries, wisdom with warmth, strength without cruelty. And that is what makes this story more than fantasy. It becomes a teaching about awakening in the middle of drama, because in real life, you might not marry a snake spirit, but you do meet the consequences of past causes. You do face patterns that repeat until understood. You do encounter people who trigger old wounds. You do fear loss and crave control. And you do have the ability to transform those patterns through awareness and practice. A lot of people ask, is destiny fixed? This story answers in a nuanced way. Some meetings are destined. Yes, some karmic knots pull people together again and again. But what you do inside that meeting is not fixed. You can repeat the old pattern, or you can awaken. You can choose revenge, or you can choose wisdom. You can choose fear, or you can choose love that is free. I want to share a real-world style reflection that echoes this. I have seen people carry a belief that they always get abandoned. They enter relationships with that fear and then hold too tight, or test the other person, or shut down emotionally, and the relationship collapses. Then they say, "See, I was right." But the deeper truth is that the fear became the cause. The fear planted seeds. The fear created the outcome. When that person begins to practice, maybe through meditation, therapy, journaling, or breathwork, they begin to see the pattern. They learn to tolerate uncertainty. They learn to communicate directly. They learn to soothe their nervous system instead of attacking their partner. And then something changes. The same destiny of abandonment does not repeat, not because luck changed, but because the cause changed. That is karma in action. That is the wheel turning in a new direction. So if this story stirred something in you, maybe ask yourself quietly, what pattern keeps repeating in my life? Where am I still living like my past pain is my present reality? Where am I gripping with fear instead of holding with wisdom? And what would it look like to renew my inner vow, not from possession, but from compassion. As we close, I want you to remember this. The goal is not to erase your past. The goal is to integrate it with understanding. The goal is not to become cold and unaffected. The goal is to become steady and kind. Awakening is not leaving your humanity behind. Awakening is finally living your humanity with clear eyes. Thank you for being here with me today. If you have ever felt like you carried a story from long ago, a fear you could not explain, or a connection that felt bigger than logic, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what part of this story felt like your own life in disguise. And if you want more long-form storytelling that blends destiny, karma, compassion, and wisdom, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment so this space keeps growing. Until next time, take a slow breath, soften your mind, and trust that even the strangest roads can lead to liberation.